Let's talk Ozempic lawsuit. What's it all about? What's going on? Where is it pending? These drugs are transformational.
We're starting to see the first stirrings of real litigation concerning what the actual effects are of this thing.
It's all about the money. What you're looking for is a really deep pocket. Nobody has a deeper pocket than pharmaceutical companies. That's just the reality. That's the situation.
You can take these drugs. They will save your life.
Everybody that I know is either taking it, has taken it, or is planning to take it.
I would imagine that over the next 20 years, these companies are in litigation.
All right, let's talk Ozempic lawsuit. What's it all about? What's going on? Where is it pending?
It seems like every time there's this sort of widely used pharmaceutical out there, drug out there that is newish, you're going to have litigation. It kind of reminds me of construction defect cases, right? Anytime somebody develops a new high-rise condominium, you're going to have construction defect litigation, right? So now we've got this new drug called Ozempic, it's these GLP-1 drugs. We're starting to see the first stirrings of real litigation concerning what the actual effects are of this thing. And I believe that the current lawsuit involves an undisclosed harm concerning
gastrointestinal paralysis,
right,
even blindness.
And blindness,
which is, something that I had never heard about.
Right.
You know what I find interesting? First of all, it's an MDL, multi-district litigation.
Right.
And for those of you that are listening and don't understand what that is, multi-district litigation is basically the cases stay individual and independent, but they're consolidated for purposes of discovery until you get to the final trial. So all of these cases that were pending throughout the country, basically for not properly labeling the drug, are pending now in an MDL. What's interesting to me about this particular drug is that these GLP-1s have existed for a long, long time to treat type 2 diabetes.
Right.
Okay, for years and years and years, and they have studies on those drugs for the treatment of diabetes. And these particular cases are about the labeling for the use of weight loss, right, which they've been incredible, life-changing, right? Some of these drugs are amazing. And anytime you have a drug, even an existing drug that's used for a new application, you're going to have people that have severe side effects.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not a doctor, but by and large, I think these drugs are transformational. I've seen the difference that it could make, and we know people where it's changed their lives entirely. They were incredibly unhealthy, and now they're super healthy. But once in a while, you're going to have these cases where, what these cases allege, or you have like this paralysis. That's pretty terrifying stuff. And even the vision loss, that's also pretty terrifying. So have those drugs, even in the context of treating type 2 diabetes, been properly disclosed, or the risks of using those drugs been properly disclosed? That's what the case is about.
Yeah.
That's really what the case is about. I think that it's a tough case, frankly.
For the plaintiffs.
For the plaintiffs.
Okay.
I think it's a very difficult case for the plaintiffs because these drugs existed before, because there is a track record of what these drugs can do, right? So if they were causing those types of dangers when you were using them to treat type 2 diabetes, then it shouldn't be anything new that if you use them for weight loss, they're going to have the same effects.
But do you think it matters what the reason is for using the drug? So let me give you an example.
Yeah.
Right. Type 2 diabetes, it can kill you. Right.
Yeah.
And so if we're faced with an option of saying you can take these drugs and they will save your life.
Right.
Right. And here's a bunch of potential side effects. 99.9% of people will say, yeah, of course. Like, I'm going to take those drugs. Like, whatever those side effects are, even if those side effects are the ones that are claimed in this case. Right.
Yeah.
I would say that in the off chance that happens, I'll roll the dice and take my chances. But now you've got almost like, I don't want to call it recreational use, but now you've got
cosmetic.
You've got this drug being used for cosmetic use by a huge percentage of the population. The risk analysis changes under those circumstances, right? If you say, hey, I want to just, take this for a few months to lose, a couple of pounds, right?
Yeah.
And you have a 1 in 100 chance of developing gastrointestinal paralysis or blindness, you probably saying, you know what, I'm just going to get on the treadmill.
Right.
And I guess I wonder if that matters. Does that come into play?
I think that's a really good point. I think it absolutely does matter. I don't have any statistics in front of me, but I would say that a significant portion of the use, when it's not for type 2 diabetes, is for cosmetic reasons.
Right.
That's just the reality. Everybody that I know is either taking it, has taken it, or is planning to take it. That's just because it works. It works incredibly well.
But if I were the plaintiff's counsel in this case, I would probably try to rebut that notion of saying, hey, well, this has been around for a long time, so the risks were generally known, or what? Sure, but it was around for a long time to treat a fatal disease.
Right.
Now, obesity is fatal.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Obesity, hypertension, all of that stuff. That's, by the way, these drugs, as far as I know, have not been approved for cosmetic use. The FDA hasn't approved it for cosmetic use. No government entity has approved it for cosmetic use, even though we know that they're being used for cosmetic use.
Yeah.
They're being prescribed, at least in large portion, for cosmetic use. I think that's the better case. If I were the plaintiff's attorney, I would say, you're marketing this drug for cosmetic use purposes, right? When you look on Instagram, for example, and they're marketing these GLP-1s, and they're not showing, the chronic effects of being morbidly obese, showing a very heavy person laying in a bed, but instead are showing like beach bodies and women in bikinis,
right.
That's clearly for a cosmetic purpose.
Right.
So that's why you're marketing these drugs. And for those uses,
right.
You haven't properly disclosed the dangers of the drug.
Yeah.
I think that's a much more compelling case. Because if you're just saying, well, you're not properly marketing it to people that have weight loss issues. Well, like you said, morbid obesity, that's a deadly condition,
yeah.
Right? Hypertension, all of these things that this drug treats.
Yeah.
So I still think it's a pretty difficult case, the way that it's been alleged in most of these cases. Now, granted, MDLs, not every single case is exactly the same. So there may be some cases that deal just with the cosmetic use issue, but I think that that's the better angle.
Yeah. And there's a lot of strategy in these cases. And these are tough cases. And I do give the plaintiffs' attorneys a lot of credit because, number one, first of all, they're going up against the best defense attorneys in the world. Yeah. I mean, for sure, right? Whose entire job is going to be to make your life a living hell with respect to trying to prove your allegations. So you've got the defendants, you got the drug company, obviously. Now there's other potential defendants, right? So you've got the doctors.
Yeah.
The FDA is interesting, right? Now, so I don't believe that there's any liability for the FDA. I don't think you can sue the FDA for this kind of a thing because ultimately it's my understanding that the entirety of the obligation falls on the manufacturer
right.
of the drug. They're the ones who are making all the money on it. And the FDA only can disclose whatever it is that the drug maker discloses to the FDA. Right. But the doctor angle is always an interesting angle. And on the doctors, their defense is always, it's this learned intermediary doctrine, which is basically that so long as the doctor is relying on the warnings that are presented from the drug manufacturer, then basically you can't prove causation with respect to the doctor, that chain of causation is broken.
Yeah. But I don't even think, you can go after, think about everybody that's marketing these drugs. Like I said, Instagram, social media, you have a bunch of clinics that every day are pushing these drugs out, and you have a bunch of doctors that are doing it. But those aren't the deep pockets. When you consider, as you know, because we've handled a bunch of them, class action or MDLs, what you're looking for is a really deep pocket.
Yeah.
And nobody has a deeper pocket than pharmaceutical companies. That's just the reality. That's the situation. Yeah. So that's the target. That's what I expect to be the target all the time because that's where the deep pockets are. They're going to keep on targeting, not the lone doctor that operates a clinic and prescribed it, 50 times last year. There's no money in that. So it's the pharmaceutical companies that are going to get hit up. And from the defense side, those pharmaceutical companies may be willing to say, I will risk a $2 or $3 billion judgment because I'm making so much more money on the back end by selling these drugs for weight loss purposes.
Yeah.
Even if they're right, still win, right?
Sure.
That's part of the strategy that you have to consider when you're representing these pharmaceutical companies. And you see it all the time, by the way. It's a calculated risk.
Right. And I don't think that this kind of these cases are going to change people's sort of the hearts and minds of the public with respect to whether or not to continue using these drugs, right? There's going to be other sorts of mass tort cases or class cases where the effects of the drug are going to be so severe that people will say, actually, I'm going to stop. Like that actually affects my decision making. I don't see this as impacting decision making with respect to the consumer that much.
So what's really interesting to me is that as I was looking into this case and researching it, I came across all of those cases about Fen-Phen. I don't know if you remember Fen-Phen, but in the 80s and 90s, there was the weight loss drug.
Right.
And that was a killer.
Yeah.
I mean, that was marketed as a weight loss drug, and it was deadly.
Yeah.
Quite literally, it was deadly.
Yeah.
So people immediately, when the threat came out and the adequate disclosures came out about the dangers of that drug, they stopped taking it.
Right.
That was then, and this is now. Now you have social media. Honestly, it's become. Serena Williams now is promoting the weight loss drugs. She's taking it, and she's saying, I saw an interview with her the other day where she said, I wasn't able to lose the weight on my own, so I needed a little bit of help. Yeah. Serena Williams, one of the best athletes to ever walk the face of this planet, is taking it. So there's like this momentum. I don't think this is going to change the hearts and minds. I think this is purely a money play by the plaintiffs in this case, but it's not going to change anything. I mean, those drugs are here to stay. They're making a gigantic difference. They're trendy. Nobody sees, at first when people were losing weight taking, Wegovy or Ozempic or Mounjaro, one of these drugs, people were like shy about saying it.
Right.
Now everybody's talking about it, because it's okay. It's become mainstream. Yeah. So no, I don't think it's going to make a difference one bit at all.
I agree with that. And it's funny because I actually think we don't yet even know what the true effects of these drugs are going to be in the long term for the amount of people that are consuming this drug, right? Like, so I would imagine that over the next 20 years, these companies are in litigation the entire time.
Perpetually.
All the time. Because new things are going to be coming up, new claims are going to be coming up, symptoms take a while to sort of manifest. And I think to your point, it's probably worth it from a financial standpoint for these companies to continue pumping this drug out.
Billions and billions and billions of dollars. That's what they're making.
Yeah.
These companies. So, I mean, but what, just for purposes of people that are listening to this, what is a labeling claim? What's the claim? What is the allegation?
I mean, the base allegation is that there's effectively a failure to disclose the risks associated with the use of a particular drug.
But the standard is what? It's adequate. It's got to be adequate.
Right.
That's the legal standard.
Right.
So it's not that the label is blank. It's that the label says this might cause, all of these things, but it leaves out another 5.
Right. Was it sufficient to put a reasonable person, right, on notice of the potential injury?
Right. So if you're defending the case, you're representing these pharmaceutical companies. What's the strategy?
Well, causation's always a big thing.
Right. I agree.
All right.
Yeah. You're not denying that it does these things. You're just trying to blame other people for it.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So I think that's a big thing. So 99.9% of the time, these cases come down to a fight between experts. Yeah. Right. In other words, is the pharmaceutical company's going to put up their expert, the plaintiffs are going to put up their expert, they're going to be kicking the crap out of each other for a while, and ultimately the jury's going to make that decision, And one of the reasons why these cases usually settle is because the downside risk to these companies to go to a jury, depending on the jurisdiction, is huge. It's huge.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
And again, like I said, you're going up against some of the best defense counsel, and also some very good plaintiffs' counsel.
Yeah. The issue of causation is the biggest thing. When we're defending that case, if I were defending that case, just focus on causation, causation, causation. Causation is, of course, did this drug actually cause this paralysis?
Right.
Right. And if you're defending the case, you can point to the fact that, well, the patient was morbidly obese. Or, if there was vision loss, well, the patient had been exhibiting vision loss for years and years and years.
Right.
This had nothing to do with the drug. So it's very difficult. And like you said, you're going to have an expert that's going to have to rebut all of those things on the defense side. And of course, the plaintiffs are going to have their own version of an expert, and they're going to do these things. What's interesting about these cases is when you have lawsuits against pharmaceutical companies, and we've been involved in a couple, some of the times the experts are basing their findings on studies that have been funded by the pharmaceutical companies that they're representing. It's wild.
It is wild.
But it works. I mean, and there's like a method to the madness.
Yeah. I mean, and these are highly qualified, highly credentialed people on both sides. And, the thing about experts that always amazes me is that I'll be working on cases where you hear an expert, oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you hear the other expert going, oh, well, that makes a lot of sense too, and that's why they pay us to be advocates, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So those are the Ozempic cases. I think it's fascinating. I want to see how they end up. But again, very tough case. I think they're going to be like the mesothelioma cases that are still going, 30 or 40 years after the fact.
Yeah.
Like you said, they're going to continue going. But it's going to be interesting to see what this does. I don't think again, my prediction, it's going to make zero impact on the industry. People are going to keep on consuming it because they love the way they feel and they love the way they look when they take these.
Yes, I tend to agree. The only question is going to be how much money do the lawyers make out of this, and I don't know. I don't know how hard these pharmaceuticals are going to fight. These pharmaceutical companies are going to really fight. Are they going to say we want to take this to trial, or are they just going to pay out the claims and then wait for the next wave of litigation?
But that's interesting that you say that, because as far as I know, and there might be one, I haven't looked at every single case in the NDL, but as far as I know, there is no injunctive class or injunctive relief that's being sought. In other words, none of these people are saying take these drugs off the market because they're dangerous for weight loss purposes. It's all about the money, which brings me back to the point that these pharmaceutical companies don't care. They'll keep on fighting it because at the end of the day, if they get a huge judgment against them, it doesn't matter. Right. They're still making multiples of that.
Yep.
Through the sales of the drug.
Yeah. No, I'm with you.
In the fen cases, I remember that there was a critical piece of evidence. And it was, I don't know if it was the CEO or the CFO, and when they got his emails through Discovery, it was a high-ranking official. They got his emails through Discovery, and it said, am I going to be able to retire anytime soon, or am I going to have to keep on worrying about these fat people? And that was the smoking gun.
Yeah.
That caused some sort of resolution. There was a lot of, criminal issues associated with that too, and I don't know how it ended up. But so at the end of the day, the Ozempic case is a products liability.
Right.
So
that's right.
So what are some other products liability cases that are trending now?
Tesla's taken some heat recently in the Southern District of Florida. There was a case, I think in the past couple of weeks, where a jury awarded, I think, almost $250 million against Tesla in favor of a plaintiff who was or the estate of a plaintiff who was killed following an accident with the autopilot program. So, again, Tesla's another one of those companies where it probably doesn't matter very much with respect to their bottom line. Tesla, of course, is appealing the decision, but we're now sort of entering a world where so much of what we do is going to be dictated by computers. And Tesla is a computer.
Right.
The car is a computer. So at what point, where do you see the line between an individual being responsible for the actions of the car, right? This is obviously, I'm sure that there's tons of disclosures and warnings with respect to the Tesla autopilot system.
Yeah.
Right. But this is also something that Elon Musk is running around touting as the best thing since sliced bread. And you get into your car, you turn on that autopilot, and you're off to the races.
You're supposed to go, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of that has to do with whether, and particularly in the case of Tesla, whether that is a product, where you have to exercise reasonable care in providing it to the consumer, or whether it's a service where you may not have to have that legal standard. I would feel comfortable in that case. And obviously, I don't know if they made it. And if they made it, it didn't win. But, I would say that this is a service that you subscribe to. We don't necessarily, it isn't a product that shouldn't be held to the standard of reasonable care that is owed to the public when you're selling a product. And you signed up. And when you signed up, you waived all of your rights to using this system. At this point, there have been a lot of accidents involving these autopilot systems with Tesla. And it goes to the question of did I have adequate notice of the risks associated with using that service with Tesla, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think I hear you on the argument that it's a service. To me, it feels like a product.
Yeah.
I have the auto drive on my car. I have the self-driving capability. I'm terrified to use it.
Yeah.
And putting aside whether or not my kids are in the car or not, even without my kids in the car, I'm terrified to use it because I have used it before, and it's not perfect.
Right.
I mean, this is not something where I feel truly relaxed. I mean, it doesn't. Maybe it's a Miami thing, right? And maybe just driving here generally using autopilot is a bad idea, but it's never seamless, right?
Right.
So I personally don't feel comfortable using it. Like I said, there's a million disclosures about why you're taking your life into your own hands every time you do use it. So, but at the same time, I think that we, as just sort of humans living in this integrated society, believe that when a product is being put out into the marketplace by a publicly traded company, and we're paying a lot of money for that product, I think our expectation is that that product is not going to kill you.
Well, that's that. I mean, that is the basic understanding and expectation. But you should also expect it to work like you're branding it to work, right? So if you say this is an autopilot system, right? The presumption is that that system is going to carry me from point A to point B without causing me to get into an accident. Forget about dying. That's the most extreme. But just even getting into an accident, you know, getting a traffic ticket because it ran a red light. Or
have you been in these Waymos? Have you seen these Waymos?
I've seen the Waymos, and they're terrifying. I can't get into those cars yet, particularly in a place like Miami. I mean, there are places where I hear the technology is better adapted because they've built the infrastructure for it. Like places like San Francisco, for example. I have not been in a Waymo there, but there's more integrated technology with the infrastructure, so it works better. But here, I've been behind those Waymo cars, and they stop, and they stop. I can't imagine the guy inside.
Oh, it would drive me crazy. It's like my wife drive. No, I'm just kidding. She's a great driver. She's actually a very good.
She's gonna listen.
She's very. That's good. I love you, honey. No, the Waymo. I was in LA a few weeks ago, and man, they are everywhere. Those Waymos, and you know. It's very easy to see well, it's not that easy to see the future, but we can see what the future is portending here.
Yeah.
And it seems pretty clear to me that those cars are going to be everywhere in the next 15 or 20 years.
Tesla's pitching the humanoid robots, right? And, you know, in the not so distant future, you're going to be able to pay a monthly fee like you pay for your car, and you're going to be able to have an assistant.
Yeah.
It's almost like a scene right out of iRobot that, you know.
Yeah. I don't know, man. There's something about our AI overlords that's starting to freak me out.
I know.
It's starting to freak me out.
And listen, by the way, that future is already here. You go outside right now in Wynwood and Brickell and Coral Gables, and you see those delivery robots. I mean, they're operating on their own. It's not particularly sophisticated. They're just delivering food. But I mean,
I'm less worried about those robots killing me in my sleep than I am about the new Tesla humanoid robots. Or just, you know, the AI taking over like my entire, you know, the banking and the network infrastructure. I know it sounds kind of paranoid, but
I don't think it sounds paranoid at all.
It doesn't feel like we've instituted any controls into how this technology is being used every single day, and it has access to every single thing, almost unfettered.
Next time on Courtside.
To me, the speed of the evolution is what's scary.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about humanoid robot thing is that Musk apparently made these robots easy to fight.
What's to prevent somebody from saying, I want an AI jury?
If you have a celebrity and you use AI to generate pornographic images of that celebrity has been harmed. AI should be regulated the same way that food and drugs are regulated.